Hello and welcome to the Disc Dungeon, where we put you on to melodies from the deepest, darkest dungeons of your computer disk. I'm your co-host Joe Dove, and with me, as always,
Julian Valencia. And if there's one thing we love talking about, it's music.
Welcome back to the darkness, deep down in the Boweries and the darkness spaces of your computer disk. Welcome back to Disc Dungeon. Sorry for the delay, friends. We had some existential issues, and for the first time ever, I will be solo in an episode. And unfortunately, our dear friend Julian, we hope to have him back next week. For the meantime, little things are going to be switched up. As you've heard, switching it up from the missing link to last week's episode. If you were wondering, there was like this 30-second boop and nothing. So we've gone ahead and added it into the intro of this 5th episode. And then this was initially going to be called The Smile That Heals, but that's going to be put off till next week. So what we're going to do today is Man Down. And Man Down has two meanings because we're a man down. As you can see, it's just me. But it's also in reference to a great loss in the rock community. Our little rocket kids are aware that the great Neil passed away from the amazing band Rush. Neil Peart, the Canadian rock god, is now up with God. He passed away today. Actually, not today. He actually passed away on January 7th. And 2020, and it's been a rough year for 2020. We almost had World War III, and music-wise, we lost one of the great drummers of the band Rush, and who knows what else is going to happen. But it was a really interesting thing in this day and age that they were able to keep that under wraps, because so much of information, even misinformation or accurate information, gets released so quickly with the onset of the digital age. So it's quite interesting that they were able to keep not only the information regarding him hidden, that he actually had a brain cancer, and he was really, really sick for this last couple of, I believe, years. He has recently passed on Tuesday, and Neil Peart will be greatly missed. There's a giant void in the rock space today because a giant legend has left us. And it's very difficult to continue what you're doing when such a hero passes on. You have to keep in mind that when some of the greats go, like when Prince and Michael Jackson and Ray Charles and so many others went on to that great concert in the sky, you have to think about all the fans left behind. Recently, David Bowie is going to have a comic book that's coming out. If you're a Comic Conversation fan, you've realized that post has been spouting around on the internet. But when he passed, I was actually in China, and that was a huge gray day. And it just feels like that's where we are again in 2020. We're back to the dark days of one less rock legend. So, like I said, we're going to tribute our rock hero, Neil Elwood Peart, born on September 12th, 1952. And passed away January 7th, 2020. He was a Canadian musician and writer, best known as the drummer and primary lyricist of the rock band Rush. Living in the Limelight, one of my favorite rock songs. Tom Sawyer, such a legendary song as well. So many great hits, so many great albums, and it's going to be so hard to listen to those in the next couple of months because you're going to know that that's it. You know, I know he had retired some time ago because probably because of his illness, most likely. But, you know, these are the things that happen. Before we get into this rock legend, I just want to apologize to you guys. 30 seconds that got switched up that you were supposed to hear switching it up, and that was Behind the Beats that Julian has been working on with one of his talented artists, and you didn't get to hear that, and I feel terrible popping our podcast cherries with you together, and you know, apologies. That's why we started off with the switching it up piece, a little 30-second bliss of some vocals, some beats, and, you know, we discussed that in Behind the Beat last week. So I just wanted to share that with you guys so you can hear the actual intro, and we apologize for that. And we're going to move on, and we're going to improve and strive to thrive. That's what I call it, instead of saying, hey, we're going to do better. No. We strive to thrive, baby. We're going to make this right, and we're going to get going, all right? So this episode, like I said, is not going to be as long as our normal podcast. We're going to be shorter because this is going to be a tribute to Neil Peart. You know, unfortunately, we don't have any legal right to play any of his music. So I will just go into the legend that is Neil and talk about things and relate them to my own personal life. You know, Neil passed away in California, in Santa Monica. They consider his genre progressive rock, hard rock, or jazz and heavy metal. To me, he'll always just be rock. Plain and simple. I mean, you don't need to meddle in all the different variations of what is and what could be. It's just a rock legend. And he was the drummer for the band Rush. So, as we know, he also was in a band called Buddy Rich Big Band and Vertical Horizon, fun acts. You can visit his website at neilpeart.net. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of tributes and fun facts that are going to be pressed on the website because of his recent passing. And we here at Disc Dungeon are just torn apart. Julie and I were talking about some of the great things that he did and our fond memories of listening to Rush. Rush was a band that, even though I'm wearing a Who shirt, for those of you on the Facebook Live, the one of you, or YouTube, Rush is a band that my aunt introduced me to. You know, big shout out to my Aunt Yvette. In 1980, so a little vague on the time, but I remember getting a tape, and that song was on there, and I never stopped listening to that song. To this day, I'll still get that and throw it in the old disc player on my non-disc dungeon. And, you know, just one of those groups that if you listen to their music, it just reminds you of happier times. It's one that'll just definitely make you smile because their lyrics are very deep, but their harmonies and their rocking on was so good. It's just some of the best music that you heard. I highly encourage you to listen to some of their music, and I definitely think that you are going to get some songs and tracks that I'm going to recommend, and they will be listed post-episode on our YouTube page. When you listen to Disc Dungeon episode 5, and you're like, oh yeah, I really want to go back and see what he was talking about, I'm going to link some of their great music on the about information. So make sure you come back to our YouTube live page. It's at the tobescene.com YouTube, and you'll get a lot of great information and other music links so you can go and listen to some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today. So, Neil Peart. Peart grew up in Port Dalhousie, Ontario, now part of St. Catharines. During his adolescence, he floated between regional bands in pursuit of a career as a full-time drummer. Now, if you've ever had a chance to see Rush live, maybe I'll link a live concert in that YouTube section. You'll see he has some of the most amazing drum set you've ever put your eyes on. This man was truly one of the best drummers ever. Some of my favorite drummers besides Peart were Stuart Copeland and Phil Collins from the amazing band Genesis. But Peart, on the other hand, probably stepped it up more than most people can even realize. After a discouraging stint in England to concentrate on his music, Peart returned home, where he joined the band Rush, a Toronto band in mid-1974. So this band Rush predates Joe Dove. That's right. You still never know how old I am. In his early career, Peart's performance style was deeply rooted in hard rock. He drew most of his inspiration from drummers such as Keith Moon, John Bonham, players who were the forefront of the British hard rock scene. As time passed, he began to emulate jazz and big band musicians Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. In 1994, he became friends with the jazz instructor Freddie Gruber. It was during that time that Peart decided to revamp his playing style by incorporating jazz and swing components. In addition to serving as Rush's primary lyricist, Peart also established several memoirs about his travels. His lyrics for Rush addressed several universal themes and diverse subjects, including science fiction, fantasy, and philosophy. As a secular humanitarian and libertarian themes were also included in his work. Peart also wrote 7 nonfiction books focused on his travels and personal story. That's probably going to be pretty badass, because, I mean, Rush is one of those bands that traveled all over the world. They were in Brazil and London, of course, Africa. So I'm really curious to some of those. I mean, I haven't picked up his books, but if you've read any of his works, please visit our YouTube page. Give us a comment. Let us know your feelings and love for Rush hero Neil Peart, who recently passed away at the age of 67. Peart's drumming skill techniques are well regarded by fans and fellow musicians and music journalists. His influence were eclectic range from Pete Thomas, Michael Giles, Ginger Baker, Phil Collins, Steve Gadd, Stuart Copeland, and Keith Moon. The Who was the first group that inspired him to write songs and playing butt end out, reversing the stick orientation for the greater impact and increased rim shot capacity. Those drummer friends of mine that are musicians deep down in the disc dungeons of their own lives, if you are familiar with these types of drumming skills, please come by. Hit us up in the YouTube live page. So one of the famous quotes, when I was starting out, Peart said, "If I broke the tips off my sticks, I couldn't afford to buy new ones. So I would just turn them around on the other end. I got used to it and continued to use the heavy end of the lighter sticks. Solid impact, but with a less dead weight to sling around." Peart had long played a matched grip, but shifted to traditional part of his style reinvention in the mid-90s under the tutelage of jazz coach Freddie Gruber. He played the traditional grip throughout his first introductional DVD, A Work in Progress, and on Rush's Test for Echo studio album. Peart went back to using his primarily, though he continued to switch to traditional at times when playing songs from Test for Echo, during moments when traditional grip felt more appropriate, such as during the rudimental snare drum section of his drum solo. He discussed the details of these switches to the DVD Anatomy of a Drum Solo. Now, again, Rush had some Neil Peart's 360-degree drum kit is something that, if you're a rock fan, it's going to be something that you're going to freak out over, because if you've never had the chance to see the Rush drum set, it's a 360-degree drum kit, and he's spinning around in there. It's amazing. It's a sight to see. I'm definitely going to link you guys to some of the most amazing stuff in rock history, okay? In the early 2000s, Peart taking full advantage of the advances in the electronic drum technology, primarily in the Roland V drums, and continued the use of samples with his existing set of his acoustic percussion. His digitally sampled library, both traditional and exotic sounds, had expanded over the years with his music. In 2008, Peart took a delivery of his third DW set, configured similarly to the R30 set in a tobacco sunburst finish over a curly maple exterior poly with chrome hardware. He refers to the set, which he uses primarily in Los Angeles, as the West Coast Kit. Besides using it on recent recordings in Vertical Horizon, he played it when composing parts of the Rush album Snakes and Arrows. It features a custom 23-inch bass drum. All other sizes remain the same as the R30 kit. So this guy even changed drumming altogether, because he's got his own custom setup so he can play specifically for all of Vertical Horizon and Rush parts. So solos. Peart was noted for his distinctive in-concert drum solos, characterized by exotic percussion instruments and long, intricate passages and odd time structures. His complex arrangements sometimes resulted in complete separation of upper and lower limb pattern. This was then dubbed the waltz, as a typical example. His solos featured on every live album released by the band. On the early live albums, All the World is a Stage and Exit Stage Left, the drum solo was included as part of the song. All subsequent live albums, Time Machine 2011 in Cleveland, the drum solo had been included as a separate track. That's a fun thing when you get like hidden tracks or separate tracks that you go to a concert and you remember that being part of the show. It adds like another piece, and it makes it more fun because you're knowing, oh wait, I remember that, but it was different. It makes it more fun when you go back. Peart's instructional DVD, Anatomy of a Drum Solo, is an in-depth examination of how he constructs a solo that is musical rather than indulgent, using his solo from the 2004 R30 30th Anniversary Tour as an example. Peart was the main lyricist for Rush. Literature heavily influenced his writings. In his early days with Rush, lyric output was influenced by fantasy, science fiction, mythology, and philosophy. In the 1980 album Permanent Waves, saw Peart cease the use of fantasy and mythological themes. In 1981, Moving Pictures showed that Peart was still interested in heroic and mythological figures, but now placed firmly in a modern, realistic content. The song Limelight, one of my favorite songs by Rush, from the same album, is an autobiographical account of Peart's reservations regarding his own popularity and the pressures with fame. Can you imagine for a second? You know, your whole life you've been ready to become a music hero. You've been a drummer. You've been ready to throw down in some of the grandest stages of them all, selling out stadiums and other concert halls, and then you can't leave because people are following you around. And that's not part of what you wanted. You wanted the simple life, but with the rock fame just kind of thwarting your perfect desires. It's an interesting balance to want to be a rock star and then yet have to deal with the flip side of it, the fame. If you're a very personal person, it's kind of hard to wander into this limelight, if you will, because everybody knows what you look like. Everybody knows more or less where you live. And you get a lot of unfriendly fellows just showing up. So I can totally understand his need for inclusion. So from Permanent Waves onward, most of Peart's lyrics became a revolution around social, emotional, and humanitarian issues, usually from his objective standpoint, employing the use of metaphors and representation. In 1984's Grace Under Pressure strung together such despondent topics as the Holocaust, Red Sector A, and the death of a close friends, an after image. Starting in 1987, Hold Your Fire, including 1989's Presto, 1991's Roll the Bones, and 1993's Counterparts, Peart would continue to explore diverse lyrical motifs, even addressing the topic of love and relationships in Open Secrets, Ghost of a Chance, Speed of Love, Cold Fire, Alien Shore, a subject which he purposely avoided in the past in fear of using cliches. In 2002's Vapor Trails was heavily devoted to Peart's personal issues along with other humanitarian topics like the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The album Snakes and Arrows dealt primarily with a veracity of Peart's opinions regarding faith and religion. The song 2112 focuses on the struggle of an individual against the collective forces of a totalitarian state. This became the band's breakthrough release, but it was also brought unexpected criticism, mainly because the credit of inspiration Peart gave to Ayn Rand in the liner notes. Now, those of you that are not familiar with whom Ayn Rand is, she's kind of like the real Republican Jesus. She says, bootstraps. There was a remarkable backlash, especially from the English press, this being the late 70s when collectivism was still in style, especially among young journalists. They were calling us junior fascists and Hitler lovers. It was a total shock to me, said Peart. Regarding his seeming ideological fealty to Rand's philosophy of objectivism, Peart said, "For a start, the extent of my influence in the writings of Ayn Rand should not be overstated. I am no one's disciple." The lyrics of Faithless exhibit a life stance which had been closely identified with secular humanism. Peart explicitly discussed his religious views in Mask Rider, Cycling in the West Africa, in which he wrote, "I am a linear thinking agnostic, but I am not an atheist, folks." In 2007, Peart was ranked number 2 after Sting in Blender magazine for worst lyrics in rock, which I don't agree with whatsoever. I think that's a terrible, terrible thing to say. In contrast, the alum's music is one of rock's most accomplished lyricists. And that, my friends, is the truth. All right. So what a way to start a year with losing a legend like that. It's been pretty rough most of the time. Hearing some of my friends text me the day and let me know about Neil's passing because they know I like the band Rush a lot. But, such is life, man. Better to burn out than to fade away, as someone once said. So that wraps up my little bit of a tribute to Neil Peart. Like I said, all those songs that I mentioned and some of the live videos of Rush will be shared on the YouTube video that this is currently live streaming. For those that are listening to us on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and one of the other many amazing Launchpad series of podcast, why don't you head on over to our YouTube page at tobeseen.com, and you can click on the About the video and listen to all the amazing works of Rush. Now, like I said, this episode is called Man Down. That's because we lost a great legend today, Neil Peart. And we lost Julian. He's not here. This is me by myself. So I'm going to keep moving on, and I'm going to talk about behind the beats on my own fun solo beat working. I don't know if you remember, but in our third episode, we talked about me traveling out to Long Island because there was a Yule Fest. And in this Yule Fest, there were going to be some wonderful singers, and there were. And I enjoyed every last one of them. And this was a trip that I had no idea would take as long as it did. I drove 2.5 hours way out in Long Island to the end of it, almost to Montauk. But I enjoyed one of the most gratifying introductions to several musicians in the East Coast and Long Island area. I'm going to be posting some videos of these wondrous musical acts on the Facebook page and the YouTube page of this dungeon, and I want and hope that you guys come and listen to these wondrous stories of musicians playing their hearts out in the Yule Fest 2019. So last year was an amazing year for me. The good stuff I'm going to focus on because, the last couple of episodes we've been talking about like divorce and, struggles coming together, starting your own life and all the things that have kind of been a little brutish. And I'm going to stop the brooding. This isn't a Zack Snyder film. This is Joe Dove, This Dungeon. So I'm going to get into the fun stuff. And that's the great Yule Fest that I went to. So tobeseen.com, we are all about music. And when I say that, it's because I mean it. This started out in 2011 with a buddy of mine, a camera, and some ideas. And now it's grown into all this, podcasts and videos and music genres, interviews and so much more. And I'm super excited to bring you on this journey here on the interweb. So, Yule Fest 2019. So this was a project that came together from another podcast, Spellcast. I'd highly recommend you listen to that if you enjoy all things occult. Yule Fest brought vendors together that are into different artwork, from druid robes, Christmas decorations, singers, witchcraft, and some occult. They had the great Stefano Andreotti, who I'm sure you've heard us talking about Stefano. He got me out there because he had a couple of people that were going to be performing that he's worked with, and he wanted me to take a look at some of these guys. So I did just that. Deanna Labasco was one of them. She's a soprano, fantastic person. Stefano himself actually got on stage. This was at the Mill Roadhouse in Long Island. That's way out there. And I met this amazing Nicole Olivia. She's a soprano, and she sang Silent Night, and there was a music pirate. I thought it was a heck of a night. There was a blues singer, and if I'm saying your name wrong, I apologize, but I'm going to try to get these guys on the podcast. I think it would be great if you guys could hear some of their not only amazing lyrics, but their music styles. Highlights of that trip were obviously the music and some of the artwork, but if you've ever been to Long Island, you know about all the fun stories like Amityville Horror, and a lot of ships that went down, but it was also the epicenter of the Gilded Age. This is where all of the glorious mansions of the founders of America lived. Once they made their fortunes in steel and other early development like railroads, oil, and all other types of barrens. They decided to settle out there because you had a beautiful ocean view on both sides, though one is actually a sound, the Long Island Sound, but the other side is the great Atlantic Ocean. And many tales have been told about some of the wondrous things there, but this tale is my behind the beats share. So I met several artists, all of whom of which have agreed to at some point come on this show, so we'll be interviewing some of them, as I said earlier. There was a soprano, a pirate, Stefano himself, a mermaid, is also a soprano, and a blues singer. And each one of them was fantastic. I can't wait to share some of their music and link you guys to what they have to offer and what you're going to enjoy listening to in the future. I have big hopes for these folks because they really put on a show in a short amount of time. So, like I said, I'm going to edit this video of these guys. I'm going to do a quick one. I'm going to make it happen, and then go from there. And I hope you come back to the YouTube page and check that out. So, like I said, Julian is not with us today. We are talking about Man Down. That's because our rock hero, Neil Peart, has passed on from the band Rush. But I wanted to talk about one of the more fun in life because we can't focus on all the macabre because person's passing and things not coming into play is not a fun way to start life in the new year. So I'm just going to focus on some of the things that have been going on in the positive. My godfather's doing better, and he should be returning home. My family's doing well. Everything's good, but musically, there have been some awesome albums that have been coming out, including Silver Sun Pickups and Fantagram. So I'm just going to go and jump right into that, and then I'll wrap it up for this week, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with Julian. We're going to find out what happened to you, man. If you know Fantagram, then you know that they're a recent American music duo from Greenwich, New York. Formed in 2007, consisting of multi-instrumentalist and vocalists Sarah Barthel and Josh Carter. That band just released a new album, and one of the songs is Mr. Impossible. Now, it's not brand new, but it came out recently, and I've been listening to it. It's pretty fun. It's like a James Bond theme. It kind of triggers certain emotions as you listen to it. Unfortunately, like I said, copyright reasons, we can't really play music that's, not ours or things that we worked on. But I am going to link the new Fantagram album into the YouTube page, so make sure you come back and visit that. So Fantagram, if you haven't heard, they're kind of labeled as electronic dream or electronica trip hop. They're kind of in the same vein of Massive Attack and those folks. They were often associated with Big Rams, Big Boy, The Grand Habit, and The Flaming Lips, which I found to be pretty interesting because I wouldn't put Fantagram and The Flaming Lips in the same breath, but, to each their own. So these guys have been best friends since preschool. In the summer of 2007, after Barthel returned home from being dissatisfied pursuing a visual arts degree in Champlain College in Vermont, they got together in a brief stint with Grand Habit and performed they played some live shows and decided to focus the bulk of their energies on making records, and the duo was originally called Charlie Everywhere. They used that name to perform around the Saratoga Springs area and released 2 EPs on the label Sub Bombin Records. Upon singing with UK label Barely Breaking Even in January 2009, they changed the name to Fantagram. Carter, founding member, suggested the name came when he heard the band wanted to switch from Charlie Everywhere to something they liked. Upon looking up Fantagram, they found that it referred to an optical illusion in which 2-dimensional images appear to be 3-dimensional, and noted the parallels between this meaning and their band's music. Fantagram's debut EP was self-released on the CE record label on May 12th, 2009, followed by another EP, Running from the Cops. Once they actually signed to a label, and after encouragement from Spectre Entertainment in Portland, who contacted them after hearing the songs on their MySpace page. Can you imagine, MySpace actually helped somebody in 2009? I thought it was gone. Nobody was alive back then. We were writing the record and were finishing it and then released it for a demo upstate. Then our plan was to move down to New York City and do the whole networking and meeting people kind of stuff. And we kind of skipped that whole thing and just because of the internet. So that's probably why they're trying to squeeze the internet. They don't want people to just pop out and get rich anymore. Fantagram released their debut album, Eyelid Movies, which I love, on September 15th, 2009. You got favorable reviews. They had some great hits. The 3 singles, Mouthful of Diamonds, When I'm Small, and As Far as I Can See, definitely popped off. Now, the reason why I'm talking about Fantagram is last time we were together in episode 4, Julian and I were putting each other on to some music, and he put me on to Frank Ocean and his musical genius. I do like Frank Ocean. Some of the stuff, but I'll talk about that with Julian next week, hopefully. What I liked about Frank Ocean is he had some great bass hit riffs, and I love some good bass. And there is a couple of great bass songs that I always refer to when I say, oh, what are some of your favorite bass? And I always go to, oh yeah, Yes, and The Police, but Fantagram is definitely up there, and that's because of the song When I'm Small. It has that boom, 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 such a heavy bass riff, and with the lead singer and the guy together, it's probably one of the best songs that they've ever done. And I'm sure that if you come back to the YouTube page and click on the link so you can hear When I'm Small, you'll probably agree with me. They are what music should be, and they are the future of music currently running from the cops. So I highly encourage you to check out Fantagram. I'm going to also end the episode with a quote from Neil Peart, because it's a rough day knowing that he's no longer with us. Neil was a legend, and when a legend goes, it's just such a shadow over the world. Do you have any favorite quotes from Neil Peart, or is there something you kind of want to share? Make sure you go and visit our YouTube page. We hit 60 likes on our Facebook page, and I appreciate all of you visiting us there at Dis Dungeon. So here's one of my favorite quotes from Neil Peart. You can surrender without a prayer, but you never really pray without surrender. You can fight with ever winning, but you never really ever win without a fight. If you choose not to decide, you still have to make a choice. No changes are permanent, but change is. Adventures suck when you're having them. That's probably one of my favorite ones, because sometimes when you're driving around or running around all over the state, or the tri-state in my case, when you're doing the adventure, it's a pain in the ass, because you got to go run and put all the multi-facets together to make the machine go. So this next quote, also from Neil, these are some great reads from greatreads.com. In case you're wondering where these came from, they're all Neil Peart's most famous quotes. A spirit with a vision is a dream with a mission. I'm going to read 3 more, and then I'm going to sign off, friends. Half the world cries, half the world laughs, half the world tries to be the other half. Each of us, a cell of awareness, imperfect and incomplete, genetic blends with uncertain ends, on a fortune's hunt that's far too fleet. Could hell be a place where there is no self-respect, a place where people have no pride in their own existence and behavior, and thus would have none for anyone or anything else? The last one, and then I'm going to say adieu. From the point of ignition to the final drive, the point of the journey is not to arrive. Friends, this has been a solo episode of Dis Dungeon. I'm your co-host, Joe Dove. I am signing off in this sad episode of Dis Dungeon, and we hope next week is going to be a little bit more lively, and hopefully our friend and hero, music producer Julian Valencia, will return. And I will definitely return to you next week on the Dis Dungeon. So as we say goodbye, we got to make sure we fly. And you got to go and do me a favor and go click on that Limelight video. Probably one of the greatest songs that I've heard from Rush, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So for now, I say goodbye. And I say, remember the legends like Neil, because they only come once in a lifetime. His drumming will inspire a generation, but they'll always seek to achieve what he's done. So make sure you've come and at least tried to run, because nobody ran the gamut like him. Take care.